Good morning and welcome to Sports Desk Live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. After 2 weeks that we've been off, and our special guest today is Bernalillo boys head basketball coach, Terry Darnell. Coach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Ed. I appreciate it, man.
You know, Coach, this is your last season coaching, man, and it's been 400th victory against Grants. And we mentioned you had some as a player playing against Grants, as a coach. Talk about there's a handful of coaches. I played for Coach Tom Hogue at Highland. He got 400 victories. And there's Coach Frank Castillo, Jim Holzman, Marv Sanders. You've joined an elite group here. Talk about what that 400th victory meant to you and the Spartans.
Well, it was exciting for me as a coach, in the perspective that knowing all the people that have been a part of that throughout the years. My assistant coaches, players, all the players that I've coached, they've all had a huge part in that. And one of the big things is, knowing that Coach Henry Sanchez, Coach Clarence Grego, who came before me, that I got to follow in those footsteps and be like them. Clarence never got to the 400, but Coach Sanchez did when he was up in the Mexico Highlands and then at Robinson. So it was it felt good for me.
Coach, it's amazing to me, and I told you that my brother played for St. Pius back in the day at the old Spartan Alley, right? So yes. You're one of five coaches: Coach Esparza, Coach Rostro, Coach Henry Sanchez, Coach Clarence Grego, and yourself. Only five coaches in Bernalillo history, man. And I did not know that. Anytime you mention Coach Coach Griego, and of course Henry Sanchez, the legendary Henry Sanchez, one of the greatest coaches in New Mexico State history, without a doubt. So I didn't even know that Bernalillo had only had five coaches. You've been there 28 years yourself, Coach.
Yeah, I've actually had the longest tenure of all of us coaches. Coach Esparza was here for 2 years. Rostro was here, I think, for, I want to say 8. And then Coach Sanchez came over from Our Lady of Sorrows, which was another high school here in Bernalillo. Back in the 60s, he came over. He started there after he graduated from the College of the University of Albuquerque. And once he came, over here and started coaching at Our Lady of Sorrows, Coach Rostro and him talked, and they knew that it was time for him to make a move. And the two schools combined, and that's when Coach Sanchez took over back in the 60s. And so between him, Clarence and myself, we've had the longest runs, and I've just been blessed. I've been blessed to be in the same spot. I played here and got to come back and coach, and so it's just truly a blessing to follow in those footsteps. And like you said, we were Bernalillo was known for basketball even before Coach Sanchez, but Coach Sanchez put us on the map, not just statewide, but he put us on the map national. I don't know if you know this or not, but Coach Sanchez was actually in a few national articles about the way that he ran his program and the things that he did, national publications, and and so he really put us on the map nationwide. So,
got a quote from a coaching colleague: "Champion, passionate, competitor, winner." That describes Terry as a player and coach. Going to be missed on the sideline, and that's from Rio Rancho head coach Wally Salata.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
That's good coming from Wally, because we've competed a lot against each other, not just as a coach but as players, and so I have a lot of respect for him, man. So I appreciate that, Wally.
Yeah, you know what's up. I absolutely what you guys are both good friends, man. I think people forget. I officiated many of your games, and people would laugh about this. That before the game we'd see each other, always a hug, always. I don't care what the circumstances were. Right now, I was right down the line, right, and man. I used to. I tell you what, I love you to death. I mean, you're a competitor. You hate, and I say this, you hate to lose a tiddlywinks. I get it. I get it. I've seen that about you. I never took that personal, because I'm kind of the same way. I hate losing more than I like winning. You have a lot of passion. Some of the other officials that I work with may disagree, but I got to tell you, they have to do their job. I had to do my job, but there was never anything personal about our relationship as a referee and as a coach, and we've remained friends for years.
Absolutely, Ed, and that's the thing, right? I know I get crazy on the sideline, and people see me, up and down and yelling at officials, especially. When my dad was alive, my dad used to tell me all the time I need to stop, focus more on the guys and stop focusing on the officials so much, and it's hard sometimes. But that is definitely a true statement that you said, is that I would never take. I hope that that guys don't take it personal. I never take any of the games that they referee against us personally. Me and you have been good friends for a long time.
Long time.
We have a mutual friend, you know, in Chuck Griffith and his family.
Oh yeah, very
great
good friend.
family that you know that I respect because his boy played for me. So you know, I think that mutual respect that we have for each other, knowing that, you know, I'm a competitor. I want the best out of my guys, and I want the best out of each game. And you know, and knowing that when the game's over, you know, we're still friends, and that it's nothing personal. It is just you know, it's just a passion. So
You're going to fight for your
team, and I appreciate you over the years, man.
Yeah, you're going to fight for your team. Yeah, I said that about Coach Coleman. Joe Coleman's the same way. And I think, you know, but remember though, you know, he kind of had an advantage there in having coached and refereed and played. And I'm not saying I'm better or worse. It's just kind of a different feel. You understand the player interactions, things like that. You know, Coach, I wanted to ask you mentioned Henry Sanchez and, you know, you mentioned Coach Griego. Could talk about the influence that both of them had on you as a head coach, because you worked for Coach Griego as a JV coach. You saw Coach Sanchez in action. Talk about the influence that they had on you as a head coach.
You know, it's amazing to me. You know, I got to watch Coach Sanchez when I was growing up. I didn't get to play from here at Bernalillo. He left in '83, and that's whenever my brother Andy was a senior that year and played for him for 2 years on varsity. And so I got to watch those games and really got to be, you know, excited about Bernalillo basketball when Coach Sanchez was still around. I went to practices and watched. And so I got to see a lot of the things that the way that he interacted with his players, the toughness and the grittiness that he gave to his guys. And so when I got to go play for him at Mexico Highlands, it was such an honor, you know, knowing I was going to go play for Coach. And I really got to see it firsthand. And I was the only freshman on the squad my first year at New Mexico Highlands. So I didn't get to play much. I was a 30-30 guy. Either you're up 30 or down 30 is the only time you're going to go in, right? So anyways, I got to sit a lot and watch Coach in action and watch him as he was coaching. I was fired up after the game, still had adrenaline, so I'd always talk to him on the bus trips, just picking his brain, him and Mike Kleppel. And, you know, they gave me a lot of good insight on how to become a coach. Playing for Coach Griego, you know, that gave me the toughness and the passion that I wanted to have as a coach as well. Coach Griego was a great influence on me on a lot of things about just having the desire to win. I mean, if you have that desire to win, then you'll do anything, you know, to try to get there. And Coach Griego instilled that in us in a lot of ways when we were here at playing for him here at the high school. So, you know, I'm grateful for both of those men. They gave me a different look in a lot of ways. Coach Sanchez, you know, was definitely one of those guys that was a player's coach. He was always talking to his players, filling out the vibe, how things were going. And Clarence was a tactician. Clarence was probably one of the best X's and O's guys that I've ever been around. And still to this day, you know, when I talk to him, you know, he still wants to talk X's and O's. And so, you know, both those guys taught me a lot, and I owe them a lot for the career that I've had here. So.
People might forget it, but back in the day, Spartan Alley was you know, I've mentioned this on several other shows, was an incredible place to watch basketball. You know, the great Mike Romero, James Buckles, Mike Kleppel. There was some great James Dominguez. I remember would shoot off his palm. I remember playing. Yeah, I don't know how he made that, man, but I would watch him, and there's just some great players there. And then you made the move to Spartan Alley. Was it in '84, '85, or to where you're at now? To where you're at now?
45, yeah.
So I think, as you mentioned, Coach Sanchez put Bernalillo basketball. I remember they played Hobbs, you know, in some run and gun affairs. And you know, we're going to talk about this in the second segment. You were back-to-back state champions in 2004 and 2005, and you made several district tournaments. You've been district coach of the year 5 times. It's a tough place to coach. There's no question about it. And I mean that with all affection, man. I don't mean that in a bad way, because of what Coach Sanchez and Coach, you know, Griego had success there. Success is expected in Bernalillo. I don't think there is anything wrong in saying that. They definitely, I know a lot of guys in Bernalillo, Mike Kleppel, Eddie Gutierrez, Ronnie Cisneros. You know, I officiated a lot of games with those guys, man. And good dudes. All 3 of those guys were some of the best people in the world that you could ever meet. Honest to God. You know, Mike Kleppel had his way of singing songs and, you know, telling jokes, and he could disarm any coach. Honest to God, he had some of the best people skills there ever was. And he was a good official besides that. but Mike had some incredible people skills. And so coaching in Bernalillo, coach, after following Coach Sanchez and Coach Griego, certainly is not the easiest place to coach. I'd say that.
Yeah, you know what? It hasn't been. There's unfortunately sometimes you lose friendships along the way because people think that you're doing things to that maybe they don't agree with. But I can tell you, my passion for Bernalillo has always been, for us to be the best, put the best players on the floor, be the best team that we can be. But also with that, Ed, it comes a responsibility for us to be good at coaches and making sure that we have good citizens, right? Good people, and developing those as well. And sometimes that's a tough thing. Sometimes kids get cut or cut themselves because of situations. So it makes it hard sometimes when you coach in your hometown. But I can tell you, I would never change it. I love it. I love Bernalillo basketball. I love Bernalillo. And so, it's going to be tough for me to step away. But I think it's time, just like it was passed down to me from Clarence, from Henry to Clarence, and now to myself. I think it's time for me to pass it to someone else and let them, give it their best shot and see what they can do.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, you know what? It's a step. It's going to be good for you. You're the interim deputy superintendent, and it's a step up, right, for sure. But one thing about you and I is the game, man. The love of the game, right? It never goes. That's even when I couldn't ref anymore. I went to broadcasting, right? So I'm lucky. I do some PA work. I'm lucky to still be in the game. Your love of the game will never go away, ever. Anytime you're between the lines, right? That passion and that fire comes out, and you may be taking another position, but that love for the game will never go away.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough thing, but I got some grandkids that I want to hang out with and teach them and watch them more than anything. And so it's a good time. I got a couple nephews that play for me right now. It's the last ones that are coming up for a while. And so it's a good time for me to kind of make that transition into something else in life and see what someone else can do, here at the program and hopefully continue to build on what we've done. Going back and talking about some of those guys you were talking about, those were huge influences in my life. A guy like you talked about, Mike Kleppel, just huge, watching him, listening to him. I say listening because back then I got to listen to more games on the radio than watching games, and listening about guys like Mike Kleppel and Mike Romero and James Dominguez and Mike Labas, the Pecoses, that played here and stuff. So, all those guys had a huge influence in my life and my career, and they definitely have a huge impact on Bernalillo basketball. So, I'm glad you mentioned those guys because I think Bernalillo would be it wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for those type of guys that came through and did the things. Joe Mondragon, coach at Western for a long time and at Clarendon. People don't know this, but that guy was phenomenal, man. You talk
heard
about
a lot about him. I never saw him, but heard a lot about him.
5'6", 5'6".
Kylie Ottman bodies that ball. Ava Love, wide open bucket. She drifts through the air and knocks it home. So
out of the corner, no. Nora with the rebound, quickly gets it ahead to Louise. In transition, the left-hand layup is good for Luciano Webster.
oh, Lyra Corona, she has a chance to change that story. She does.
Diaz now with the ball. It's a three-point lead. Montoya, she tries to equalize. Boom! Olivia Montoya with her second three ball of the second half.
There's an assist from half court on the inbounds pass.
That's a long shot. The laser shot. Holy cow. Closes down quickly. Garcia Romero for two.
With the rebound here, Benjamin. Throw it up. He's going to throw it up to his big fella, and his third dunk of the night. Hey, remember, Greg Brown doesn't have any timeouts. They get it into Hill. Hill's going to have a chance to win it at the hole. Yeah! He does it! Hill bangs in the three, and the Hawks win it 60-59.
I prefer to do stuff online. I can find things much quicker, do the research I need, and have it shipped or waiting for me to pick up. The Shop by Payments option was perfect for me. I got online, clicked on Shop by Payments, put in my down payment and monthly budget, and the guessing was done. From laptop, I was able to nail down the bike I wanted, add a few customizations, and get an estimate on my trade-in.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Networks. Good morning. Welcome back to the Sports Desk live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with producer Alden Iwani. Our special guest is Bernalillo boys head basketball coach Terry Darnell, entering his last season after 28 years of coaching for Bernalillo. I've got another quote from you from somebody that's a Bernalillo legend. Terry's always been a competitor. He always wanted to be the best he could be, even as a coach. Terry changed the culture of Bernalillo basketball, and that's from Mike Romero. Mike Romero himself, man. You know, and I know Mike very, very well. We played a lot of ball with each other, man, and you know how good he was, and he's just a great guy, and he has all the respect in the world for you. I talked to him last night, and he supplied that quote for me.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate Mike. He was a huge influence on my career as well, because when I was hurt at Mexico Highlands, I had to sit out a year. I was redshirting. I would come back and play in a league here on Tuesday nights, and I play against Mike. And I mean, that's the legend of Bernalillo, right? So Mike got to give me a lot of good information, good things, you know, a lot of stuff that I could use in the court, and you know, and just kept me grounded and really helped me focus on basketball. So I appreciate Mike Romero, man, and all that he's done in the, you know, he was a legend. Unfortunately, he didn't get to play in this court because he would have probably packed his gym as well.
Oh gosh, you kidding me?
Definitely back in the old alley. So.
Oh my gosh, that guy was amazing. He sure was,
Yeah.
And him and I still talk quite a bit. You know, and I have all the respect in the world for him. You know, I wanted to ask you about this year's version, your last season as a coach, and tell us about this year's version of the Bernalillo Spartans. Beat Albuquerque High a couple weeks ago, 54-51. Got your 400th victory. Where do you see this team going?
You know, I have a really good group of kids. We're probably the smallest group that we've had in a long time. When my son Ty played for me, that group that we had was probably the smallest, shortest starting lineup in the state for sure, and one that I had. But this group is just about the same height. But they got a lot of heart. They press the heck out of you. I always say it's never good when the head coach stands in a huddle and he's the tallest guy. You know, usually you want some taller guys in the huddle than you are. But you know, all these guys have just as big a heart as I do about wanting to win, and you know, I'm excited about them. We've lost 6 games, unfortunately, but 5 of those games have all been by 3 points or less, and so you know, we're right there. We just got to figure out a way to win those games instead of losing. So I really think that, you know, we can make some noise this year. I think if we continue on the path that we're going and getting better every practice, then I really think, you know, the sky's the limit for these guys, and we're going to surprise a few teams, you know, coming down the playoffs.
Yeah, those are very close losses. You know, you played at Bernalillo for about 85 to 87. You also played at New Mexico Highlands 87 to 92 under Henry Sanchez. 2 years as a JV coach. First season as head coach was 94, 95. Long time ago, 30 years at Bernalillo. I mean, I said 28, 30 years. 400th win against Grants. 2 state championships, 2004 over Lovington, 2005 over Portales. 22 years qualified for the state tournament. 3 championship appearances, 5 semifinal appearances, 8 district championships, 5 district coaches of the year, Albuquerque Metro Coach of the Year for 3A in 2003. And this is what I want to ask you about. I wanted to make sure we read all your accolades. Those matter, Coach. They really do. Coach 2 brothers, 2 sons, and 7 nephews. Talk a little bit about that, because, you know, there's always a Darnell connection. I'll check the box scores and I'll say to myself, I wonder if, you know, if they're related to Terry, and they turn out that they are. Talk about that family tree of Darnells there.
Yeah, you know, and some of it is not just Darnell's. I mean, some of it is my ex-in-laws family, the Ludi Herrera side, but you know, they're my nephews, and I've coached here for a long time, and was blessed to, when I first started out, I coached my brother on JV, my brother Tracy. He was my JV point guard, and then when I took over the head job, the head coaching job, my brother Lance, my youngest brother, I got to coach him into a state semifinals down in Las Cruces in '96. You know, we almost upset Silver City that year and got to the state championship against Academy, but we ended up losing in overtime to those guys. And you know, it was a tough game, but I got to coach my brother, and so from that it kind of started. Never intended, you know, when I came back to Bernalillo, that I was going to coach family members so much. That wasn't my intent. It was just to coach, but I was blessed along the way to coach. You know, the best experiences is coaching your family, you know, getting to know them more on a more personal level, nephews and stuff. But I can tell you, being able to coach my sons has been probably the biggest, you know, pride in my career. Being around them and seeing the young men that they developed into, and you know, and helping our Spartan program along the way. Like I said, my son Ty, they got to go to the state tournament, and we lost Espanola in the quarters that year. And then my son Trey actually lost right here in the regionals. That's back when we had regions, if you remember. He lost right here on this floor in a heartbreaker, and that was probably the biggest. Not probably, it's the biggest heartfelt loss that I've had, even in my career of playing. You know, watching him go through that was tough. But you know, I've had some great highs, some good, you know, some lows, but you know, I've had a really great and blessed career here, coaching family members and coaching all the players that I've coached along the way. So really feel blessed and proud.
You know what? You've had success as a coach, as a player. There's no doubt about it. But it's funny, Coach. You know, we always remember the ones we love winning, but we hate losing. And with the ones that we lost, you just mentioned that about your son, and you almost broke up. And you know what? I get it. I get it, man. Those are your kids, and to see your kid, you know, there's moments, and it's the breaks of the game, right? My son, when he was coaching at Pius, I would tell him, son, sometimes the breaks of the game break for you, and sometimes they don't. And that's just the way it is, right? You know, on the way to any championship, and you know this as well as anybody, you got to have great execution and a lucky bounce or 2 or 3, a good call, a bad call, you know, goes against you, right? There's so many things that people just don't get unless they've been part of it.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right. And you know, and like I said, that one with Trey, my son Trey, here on this court was the toughest loss I've ever experienced. You know, as a coach and, you know, as a dad. You know, at least Ty, when he lost, you know, it was on the pit floor. It was a tough game. He lost by 2 to Espanola, but, you know, he was on the pit floor, you know, and that's where every kid wants to be in New Mexico, is on that pit floor whenever your final game. You're hoping it's a championship, but you at least get the chance to be there would be the great thing. So, you know, and I experienced that myself. You know, in '86, we lost in the state championship to Grants, and that kind of fueled that whole Grants rivalry with Bernalillo. You know, we lost in an overtime game. You mentioned earlier, I mean, you were talking to Richard Casals and John Arnett and Joel Arcaro and Tommy Herrera, my brother Carl, who played on that team. You know, all of us, you know, Dean Mortensen, Matt Archibek, you know, we experienced a lot of great that year, but that loss in the state championship will always, you know, be one of those things that I remember, I'm sure. So.
I told you, you know, Richard's a good friend, and Richard would mention that, and I still think years later, you know, like we said, as coaches, you know, I coached with Highland at Highland for, even when I officiated, there would be tough games like that when I left the floor, and I would be like, man, I wish somebody didn't have to lose, but they did, right? But I would go in the locker room like, man, that poor kid or whatever, because it hurts, man. It really does. You know, talk to us about your new duties as the interim deputy superintendent. Tell us a little bit about that. That you're going to be transitioning from coaching to being, you were the interim deputy superintendent last year. Now you're the interim again, and you're going to be transferred into that position on a full-time basis.
And actually, I was what it was is I was interim superintendent until they hired Mr. Montano, Matt Montano, who is actually a former Spartan as well, who played on this court. And so really proud that Matt's back and leading our district. You know, he played for Clarence back in I think it was '89 and '90, and you know, a great guy. Now I'm the deputy superintendent, and you know, work side by side with Matt in leading our district. And that's one of the things that, you know, that I hope that I can help him do, is lead our district in the right direction and start to really focus on education. My career a lot of times has been, you know, focused on basketball and focused on athletics as the athletic director for 18 years. And so now, you know, this whole shift of me focusing on education and really trying to help kids in our community, you know, to become, you know, to help us have a better school district has really been a challenge, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of, you know, kind of a new realm for me. But I really appreciate the leadership that Matt Montano has given us, and you know, we're in the right direction. So my duties will be a lot of that, and it takes away from basketball, and that's one of the reasons that I'll be retiring, is because if I continue in that job, there's no way I can do them both and do them both well. And so I think it'd be unfair to, you know, the players and anyone that's here, that, you know, that they don't get the right attention that's needed. So, you know, I'm definitely, you know, looking forward to who's going to take over that job. You know, and hopefully they'll find someone that will come in and, you know, and have the same passion and desire that I had, and that Coach Sanchez and Coach Clarence Grego gave to me. So,
well, I'll tell you what, you're not going far. I'm sure you'll still be around at the games, and you know, your eye is good. And there'll be the new coach, whoever that might be. And, you know, your presence is always going to be welcomed, a little bit intimidating, right? You know, right. Coach Sanchez, when he went to games, I'm sure you're kind of like, man, you know, you want to make a good presentation. When Coach Holzman was no longer the coach at Albuquerque, it was the same thing over there, right? The legendary coaches that come back and they watch their old teams. As we wrap this up, I want to ask you this. Now, after 30 years, and again, you know, you're a great ball player at Highlands. I always tease you, like, you know, you're still a darn good player, and stop playing with them kids. Because you know, the kids go home, they say, who's the best ball player? It's still Coach Darnell. And I just tease you because that's how good you are. But after 30 years, what are you going to remember the most? It's a lot of memories here, right? After 30 years of, you know, even more playing, coaching, right? What are you going to remember the most? And it's a hard question because there's a million things. What will you miss the most? What will you remember the most?
You know, there's always going to be games you're going to remember, right? I mean, that's just a given. You're a coach and a player. But there's no doubt the things that I'll remember are the friendships that I've made and the acquaintance, you know, people that I've met and that I've worked with, and the athletes. You know, I owe so much to so many guys that have come across this floor and played for me. You know, in helping me become a better person, a better coach. So those are the things that I'm going to remember the most. It's always a pleasure when you see some former player and they come up and give you a handshake, you know, and still call you coach. And I'm gonna choke up, Ed. So
that's all right, anyways, I get it.
That's the best honor, right? Even when I was interim superintendent, people would say, "Hey, superintendent," like, you know, then I'd get a guy that would say, "Hey, coach," and that to me meant a lot more than even the superintendent's, you know, title. I mean, the coach is, you know, forever in our hearts and always in our minds about, you know, what they taught us. So hopefully I've had that influence on a lot of players, but that'll be the things I remember the most.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I had a chance to talk to your principal, Tim McCorkle, who's a longtime friend of mine, man, and ex-Highland baseball star, and I think the world of him, and he has the utmost respect for you, spoke very highly of you. So you had a lot of influence. And you know what, Coach, the thing is, as a deputy superintendent, more lives to touch in different ways, education, the net goes wider, man, goes wider.
Well, thank you. And I hope so, you know, hope I can do that now and help Matt Montano to continue what we're doing and build on it. But But, you know, I've been blessed. I truly have, and I want to thank everyone that's ever been a part of it. So,
Coach Terry Darnell, Bernalillo boys basketball coach, thank you so much for being our guest, and we wish you the best of luck this being your last season.
And thank you very much, man. I appreciate you, man, and all the friendship over the years. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, you bet, Coach. For producer Alden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.